Good morning, everyone. And for today's presentation, I am going to discuss with you my topic, which is the evolution of art. But before anything else, let me introduce myself first. So, my name is Adeline Bayawa, and I am your reporter for today. So, evolution of art. Let's define first what is art. So, a visual object or experience consciously created through an expression of skill or imagination. The term art encompasses diverse media such as painting, sculpture, printmaking, drawing, decorative arts, photography, and installation. So, evolution of art. So, what is the evolution of arts? So, it is a branch of the generative art in which the artist does not do the work of constructing the artwork, but rather lets system do the construction. So, Upper Paleolithic Age of Men. The emergence of regional stone tool industries such as the Parigorian, Aurignacian, Solotrian, and Magdalenian of Europe, as well as other localized industries of the Old World and the oldest known cultures of the New World. So, during the Paleolithic period, the man was a hunter and food gatherer. The human being used to use simple chip and chop types of stone for hunting and other purposes. Next is Neolithic era. Is a term used for the period in our past when the shift from the hunting and gathering wild animals and plants to a farming lifestyle occurred. It was also the time when pottery was first used, and in many regions, people also began to live in permanent settlements. The Neolithic is the era when the farming of plants and animals begins, and when as a result, humans first begin to create permanent settlements. And also, it was the time when pottery was first used and first occurred. Next is a Bronze Age. The period of ancient human culture characterized by the use of bronze that began between 4000 and 3000 BC and ended with the advent of the Iron Age. So the Bronze Age is a time period when bronze replaced stone as the preferred material for making tools and weapons. So this led to improvements in agriculture and brought with it changes in the way people live. Age of Idealism. So idealism asserts that reality is akin to ideas, to mind or selves rather than to material forces. Idealism is a way of interpreting human experience and the world which places emphasis on mind as in some way prior to matter. Just as materialism emphasizes material, so idealism stresses mind. So idealism, but there is a force in the argument that theism is both subjective and objective. Idealism may be classed together as opposed to materialism. So, pantheism may be regarded as a more thoroughly idealist view than theism, since pantheism is the view that nothing exists except God and His modes and attributes, so that the material world must be an aspect or appearance of God. So, subjective and objective idealism. So, when we talk about subjective idealism, it is purposes that a material object exists only in the extent that a human being perceives the object. So, when we talk about also the objective idealism, which proposes the existence of an object, consciousness that exists prior to and independently of human consciousness, thus the existence of the object is independent of human perception. So, Middle Ages. In European history, traditionally dated from the fall of the Roman Empire to the dawn of the Renaissance, in the 5th century, the Western Roman Empire endured declines in population, economic vitality, and the size and prominence of cities. It also was greatly affected by the dramatic migration of peoples that began in the 3rd century. So, in European history, So, Baroque era. So the Baroque music era was a period of music where major development laid the groundwork for the classical music of the next few centuries. The Baroque period saw an explosion of new musical styles, which the introduction of the concerto, the sonata, and the opera. So, neoclassical era. The revival of classical ideals within the neoclassical art was almost a period of reminding the world again via visual communication of the beauty and structure preferred by the ancient, whether they knew it or not, and only we can dream of attaining that in our own age of enlightenment. Romantic Age, also known as the Romantic Movement or Romantic Era, was an artistic, literary, musical, and intellectual movement that originated in Europe towards the end of the 18th century, and in most areas was it peaked in an approximate period from 1800 to 1850. So during this time, literature began to move in channels that were not entirely new but were in strong contrast to the standard literary practice of 18th century. So Impressionism. Impressionism is a 19th century art movement characterized by relatively small, thin, yet visible brush strokes, open composition, emphasis on accurate depiction of light in its changing qualities. So the passage of time, ordinary subject matter, unusual visual angles, and inclusion of movement as a crucial element of human perception and experience. So, Impressionism originated with a group of Paris-based artists whose independent exhibition brought them to prominence during the 1870s and 1880s. So the thing is, Impressionist artists were not trying to paint a reflection of real life, but an impression of what the person, light, atmosphere, object, or landscape looked like to them. And that's why they were called Impressionists. They tried to capture the movement and life of what they saw and show it to us as if it were happening before our eye. Next is Native American art. So traditional forms of indigenous art, most of which are still practiced today, were a means for Native Americans to pay homage to their societal values and customs. They use a wide variety of mediums to signify some of their defining individual and cultural beliefs. So there remain different objects created by Native Americans that can be appreciated for their artistic craftsmanship and aesthetic beauty. So Native art includes baskets, beadwork, keelwork, ceramics, and sculpture. Each one of these took great skill and differed from region to region. So African art is a picture art in African culture, a tribute to the Nubian people and to their female artistic tradition. House painting is a style of African art practiced by the southern Nubian people of South Africa. Is predominantly practiced by the Nubian women when painting homes. So, Japanese art. Japanese art is the painting, calligraphy, architecture, pottery, sculpture, and other visual arts produced in Japan from about 10,000 BC to the present. So this ultimate guide will introduce the most aspiring aspect of Japanese art, from the oldest surviving silk screen painting through magnificent 18th century wood block prints to Japan's most famous modern artist, Yayoi Kusama. European art evolution is the commission of church, architectural, painterly, and sculpture, providing the major source of work artists. The history of the church was very reflected in the history of art. During this period, in the same period of time, there was renewed interest in heroes and heroines, tales of mythological gods and goddesses, great wars, and bizarre creators which were not connected to religion. So, realism, different art movement. So, a mid-19th century artistic movement characterized by subjects painted from everyday life in a naturalistic manner. However, the term is also generally used to describe artwork painted in a realistic, almost photographic way. So, realism art movement is recognized as the first modern movement in art, which rejected traditional forms of art, literature, and social organization as outmoded in the wake of the Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution. So, realism versus style. So, between realism and stylism is that with realism, you are restricted to making things look real while enhancing their visual language. With stylism, you are free to play with the shapes and colors, exaggerate or remove details to enhance the look and feel in any direction. So, contemporary age, also known as the art of today, more broadly includes artwork produced during the late 20th and early 21st centuries. It generally defined art produced after the modern art movement, the present today. So, talk about contemporary age, it is the art of today. So, that's all for today's presentation. I hope you learned something from me. Thank you.